Hello, I'm London Hainsworth, and I'm here to present my thesis, Historic Preservation in Tornado-Stricken Communities. I was advised by Nick Calidresis, and my reader was Michael Lambert. The question I get the most often is, why tornadoes? Well, I notice that they are often not included in historic preservation plans or comprehensive community plans. There's also no guidance about tornadoes from major historic preservation groups, and I wondered, why is that? The average annual number of tornadoes per year is 1,253. That's a shocking number to most people. And they also happen at a wide geographic region. There is no Tornado Alley anymore. I also chose to focus on tornadoes because I have personal experience with them. This is my hometown. Stockton, Missouri, population of about 1,000 when I lived there, but it was taken away within a matter of 6 seconds. Our historic downtown, which was filled with beautiful buildings, is now a different city. In fact, the only building which was saved is this one, and it's because it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Our town was filled with quirky, historic buildings which had a wide variety of style and character. This building was my favorite, Hopkins Hardware. I came here a lot as a child because my parents were constantly building something. I remember how it was so dusty inside, and I remember how the timber floors would squeak at incredible volume as I walked across them. I remember the paint cans and how they teetered on the shelves. To me, it was more than just a building. It was a container for my memories. Now that this building is gone, my memories of it are beginning to fade. And that is because old buildings act as capsules for our memories. This was written 3 days after the tornado. We knew that the city would never be the same, but we didn't do much to prevent it from being demolished. Our cleanup process was too thorough, in my opinion. Today, our town looks like this. The variety of character, the variety of style, it's gone. The city is now, I'd say, unremarkable. I noticed that it's not just me who's seeing this trend happen. This old Facebook post shows that many of the citizens of Stockton miss those old buildings and what they represent, the larger essence of home. Even today, the discussion continues. These buildings equal home. And that feeling of home is only captured whenever we restore our tornado-stricken cities. As I was researching this topic, I found that every city was the same in one way, no matter how destructive their storm was. They all used it as an opportunity. And they could use this opportunity in one of 3 ways. The first is to start fresh. I would say this is the role that Stockton decided to follow. The other opportunity is to boost economy. And the third is to restore. And I'm hoping to convince you all that restoration is the best way to retain our sense of home and community by maintaining our historic buildings after a tornado. I'll show you this example first. They decided to restore their city, which was damaged by a tornado in 2006, Iowa City, Iowa. The Iowa City tornado occurred on April 13, 2006. It was an EF2 tornado. It damaged 1,016 residential buildings and 35 commercial buildings, and it cost $15 million in damages. But the city was preservation-minded. They were prepared for the storm because they had expansive historic resource surveys, or inventories of their historic buildings. They also had 5 National Register of Historic Places districts and 16 conservation districts. They were, as a whole, preservation-minded. Because of these things, the entire city, the city government, the local nonprofits, all knew that the city's goal was to maintain their historic resources. So when a tornado came through, they knew what to do. This shows the path of the 2006 tornado through Iowa City. As we can see, it traveled through some of the most historic areas of the city. This neighborhood is one of the most historic in the city, and it was severely impacted by the storm. But the city and the Historical Commission and several nonprofit groups acted quickly and collaboratively to restore these buildings. They worked very quickly. Within 48 hours, the Historic Preservation Commission handed out flyers to owners of historic properties. This flyer, which I'll break down in the next slides. Step 1 is seemingly obvious. Take plenty of photos. But they recommend that you repeat until you think you can't take any more photos, and then take a few more. You also have to focus on surviving decorative elements. These are very often forgotten, and you have to have pictures of them in order to be able to replace them. They also recommend that buildings be protected with tarps and plastic from rainwater. That building parts be salvaged, especially decorative elements, and that you tell friends and family that that's the plan. Saving these insignificant seeming elements can help fabricators remake them. If they have a sample, it'll be easier to do. Also, to assemble a list of what needs to be done so that you can create a scope of work. This is a document that you can share with insurance adjusters and contractors so that they know exactly how to price the project and the duration. They also included information about historic districts and conservation districts so that people would know how to proceed regarding Historic Preservation Commission meetings and things of that nature. They also sped up the review process and made a goal to give petitioners approval within a week. They also made sure to provide workshops, an advice hotline, which was answered by actual architects and engineers, and an architectural salvage and storage. They let people know using announcements put up all around the city. And all this advice was provided at no charge. Also, new building materials and replacement materials were available free of charge. It's a really great tool. The helpline was extremely important because homeowners in the midst of chaos could call and quickly get an answer from a trained architect or engineer who could tell them whether or not things the insurance adjuster are telling them are true or accurate, or whether or not certain elements could be saved. Iowa City is also incredible because their mayor is preservation-minded. He wrote a letter to insurance adjusters and asked them to adhere to preservation codes. I couldn't believe this when I saw it. Not only that, he also wrote to State Senator Joe Bolcom and asked him for funding for historic properties, just for historic properties. And by doing this simple act, they were able to secure a $250,000 grant intended to supplement insurance costs. They used their tornado as an opportunity to restore their historic buildings. Not only that, but they used it to make them actually better and stronger than they were before the tornado. I'll give you some examples. Many of the houses display more historic integrity and character than they did before the storm. They used the extra $250,000 funding to help homes like this replace non-historic materials, which had been added throughout the years, with more historically accurate materials. In this case, the home was clad in asphalt siding on the left side, and they removed that to use instead historically accurate wood siding. In this example, you can see how the roof line had been altered over time and how they were able to bring it back to historic accuracy after the tornado. The same is true for decorative elements found on the porch. And finally, in this example, the home was considered a total loss by insurance adjusters, but using the grant, they were able to rebuild to historic accuracy. Iowa City used the tornado as an opportunity to restore their city, and in doing so, they maintained a sense of home and heritage. The next example used the tornado as an opportunity to boost their economy rather than restore their historic buildings. This example is Springfield, Massachusetts, and their 2011 tornado. The Springfield tornado was an EF3 level tornado, and it occurred on June 1st, 2011. It traveled for 6.2 miles through historic Springfield, and it caused $89 million in damages. To compare, Iowa City was $15 million in damages. Springfield, Massachusetts is a historic community. It was founded in 1636 as a trading post. They had some incredible buildings, and they knew it. 13 local historic districts in total. But the city has seen a recent blight problem, and there are many vacant lots, which was only made worse by the tornado. This map shows the path of the tornado and also shows that many of the historic districts were impacted by the storm. The light blue outlines are National Register districts, and the pink outlines are local historic districts. We will be focusing on this neighborhood, the South End neighborhood. The historic South End was not listed as a historic district and had little protection for historic resources. However, one person I interviewed said the following about the neighborhood. Springfield is one of those cities that you can't pay people to move to. Do people move here for our high crime and our bad schools? No. They move here because of areas like the South End, which had incredibly unique historic buildings. The South End's historic buildings were its greatest asset. End of quote. Rather than repair this asset, the city decided to use the tornado as an opportunity to boost their economy. And so they planned to build a large casino. MGM won the construction bid for the city. Interestingly, they were the only casino of 5 to propose to build in an already constructed area of the city. Other casinos planned to build on open, unoccupied land. MGM, however, chose to build in one of the most historic neighborhoods of Springfield. The MGM footprint was drawn over 12 historic properties in the South End neighborhood. They were required to analyze their impact to the 4 properties which were listed on the National Register of Historic Places. One of these buildings was the historic State Armory building. It was built in 1895 as a National Guard armory, and it is incredible. Its back half, a later addition, was severely impacted by the storm and was demolished. But the older portion, as you can see, only had minor damage. The picture on the right shows the building 3 years after the tornado. The building was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and so, in order for FEMA to be able to work on the building and demolish the back half, they needed to analyze their adverse impacts to it. After that process, the city of Springfield was given $17 million for the armory. However, the city chose to use the money to build a new community center. The interesting thing is, the old community center was not impacted by the storm. Instead, they decided to sell the property to MGM. MGM kept the facade of the building, but tore down the rest. They even reconstructed the back half of the older portion of the building. As part of MGM's mitigation process, they were required to keep the facade of the United Electric Company, built in 1910. However, they refused to keep an ornate marble lobby that had a really large stained glass dome. This would have only required them to keep a 30-foot long portion of the interior, but they refused to do so. Today, just the facade of the building has been maintained. They were also required to move the French Congregational Church, which was built in 1887. They relocated it to another property. Out of the 12 properties within the project site, only these 3 were maintained in some way, and as we saw, 2 of them only were able to maintain their facade. And now I ask, was it worth it? Was it worth Springfield tearing down 12 of its most historic buildings? This article says no. MGM Springfield's gaming revenue was down $144 million below projections in the first year. Also, they had little impact on most neighborhood businesses. The MGM project did not improve local business because if you think about it, when you visit a casino, it's a one-stop shop. You go in, there's a restaurant, there's a hotel, there's entertainment. You never have to leave. You're not going to go visit the mom and pop shop around the corner because why do you have to? So did they use their opportunity after the tornado in a good way? I'll leave that up to you. Lessons learned. It's all about preparation and quick action. Documentation before the storm is crucial. You have to have photos. You have to have surveys, or the restoration of historic properties just can't happen. You also have to involve local government officials in the preservation process early, and you have to prepare them to stand up for preservation way before the storm ever comes. I also really recommend that historic preservation groups create a plan for quick action after the storm, a 36-hour plan that states, Miss London, after a tornado, will go out and photograph Block A, or Jim, after the storm, is going to call local emergency officials and ask for advice. Things of that nature can really make a major impact. And why are we doing this? So that we can maintain a home for somebody. So that somebody else can have their memories of squeaky floorboards and dusty shelves. And finally, I would like to thank the following people for helping this thesis come to fruition. And I would love to thank all of you for listening and for your questions that you will have after this presentation. Thank you very much.